party without strong enough. The nice thing is, there are more of us, maybe we can figure out you don't have to be full force in order to be a formidable president.
I'm going to sit with all the children, okay, and then somebody else. Your husband can sit with you, and I'll buy you. He sits with mom.
I'm so
It's so good to live together, you guys.
It's amazing.
I feel like you guys have extended the newlywed period.
Oh yeah.
Weird.
2 first years of marriage. That's what I tell people.
Kind of. We're gonna go grab a seat. Yeah. We'll grab a seat. No, they're over there. You sit wherever you want.
Everyone, if you'd like to take your seats, we'll get started.
Oh my gosh.
Hi, thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Eli Campbell. I'm the programming coordinator here at Hill Center. And I'd love to ask quickly, how many of you guys is it your first time at Hill Center tonight? All right, excellent. Well, I love a new audience. We're so happy to have you guys here for this great event. Please check out the samplers on your chairs, give you an idea of all of the cool things that we do here, and we hope to see you back sometime soon. Now I'd like to introduce Scott Simon and Charity Tilleman Dick.
Could you raise your hand if you were not in the Tilleman Dick family? All right.
There's a whole section though.
Yeah.
There's a whole section.
Well, my family will join us. They are in progress, as we say. Where did you put yours, Jerry?
I put it right here, upstage.
You guys have an idea where she put it? Don't tell me where she put it.
Is it picking up?
Yeah.
We're ashamed of microphones in my industry. So.
Yes, right. Oh my gosh. All right, sorry. How's this? All right?
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
Oh, well, look, it's a pleasure to see everyone, and it's been a tough week all over the country. It's been a tough week, and firstly, we look forward, my family and I, a chance to see Charity again. But I think a lot of us we can use a a jot of the kind of inspiration and boldness and courage that Charity exemplifies from which we've been learning this week. I am blessed in so many ways, but among the other ways in which I'm blessed is I get to meet a lot of remarkable people. Some not so remarkable too sometimes. That comes with the territory, but none, I must say, more remarkable. Yeah, you guys agree with that, don't you? So, in any event, let me begin trying to interview Charity. We met a number of years ago. We've both been patients at the Cleveland Clinic. I have a much less spectacular and sensational story. But,
Do you want to trade?
pardon me?
Do you want to trade?
Not even, I mean, you know. My sentence begins with a spinal disorder. Yours begins with something much more serious, spectacular. Although we both feel we owe our lives to that service, where we vigor and good health. As painful as it might be. So there you were, an opera singer, an opera student in Budapest, right? And then you got what must have sounded like it was in many ways a death sentence.
Yeah. My phone is going off somewhere, so don't look at your neighbor and
You have an opera on the phone?
It's me. I should have opera. I have the ring that it came with. That's all right. I was.
Forgive me.
Yes.
Can I, in theory, download you singing on because my ringtone?
Oh, you probably
I
could.
have Katy Perry at the moment. I wouldn't mind switching
I
Katy
met
Perry
her
out for
ex-husband
you.
the other day. He was so nice.
Russell Brand?
Yes,
Russell Brand.
he was
He's a
so
very
kind.
bright guy.
He
No.
was so kind. But
Oh, please, continue.
oh, yes.
We were joking about the
Non
death
sequiturs.
sentence.
I'm very good at those. So I was in Hungary. I was studying music and an opera with Eva Marton, who is just one of the sopranos who I've always loved and admired most. When I had in succession 3 different fainting spells, 2 while dancing, 1 while running to catch a tram, and one crossing the street. And I didn't think too much of them, but I thought enough of them to call my mother and make sure that my insurance was all in good order before I got home. I anticipated taking a year and a half off. In my faith tradition, a lot of young people go in certain missions for 2 years or a year and a half. And I was planning on taking a little time off.
We should explain.
I'm
The Mormon side.
Yeah, so I'm Mormon and I'm Jewish, which is a funny combination. But I think culturally I'm a little more Jewish and religiously I'm more Mormon. So it's a lot.
I'm trying to think there's a joke somewhere.
There are minimalists and there are maximalists. And Tilleman Dick's, I think the name says it all. We just want everything in there. But so before you go on your mission, there's a long medical test that you need to go through. And my desire to serve a mission literally saved my life because I would have never gone through all of those tests had I not wanted to go on this religious mission. And it was very hard for me not to serve a mission. Growing up, we had these wonderful young women who I idolized. They all sang beautifully, and I just wanted to be them when I grew up. But I realized that I had a different mission, and so I went back to conservatory in the United States, at the Peabody Institute in Baltimore, which was right by the hospital where I was receiving treatment at Johns Hopkins, and I sang, and I ended up traveling the world, and things were going really well until there were some personal tragedies in my life that sent my health into a downward spiral, and soon I needed a double lung transplant. Now, during this time of medical decline, I did fall in love, which was a wonderful thing. I never done that before. I'd really only sung about it. And I've gone on a lot of dates with lovely men, but none of them were for me. And so
Forgive me, any of the others join us tonight?
I don't, because we're
I
actually.
don't want you to say the wrong thing.
No, I wouldn't. I literally, I'm very fortunate because there wasn't a dud among them. They were all lovely. They just weren't a match. So, but I did fall in love, and I also had a lung transplant, so lots of new experiences. And then I met you about a year after I had the transplant, or 8 months.
The first transplant.
Yeah, the first transplant.
You had a disorder that essentially put your lungs on guard.
Yes, it's called idiopathic pulmonary arterial hypertension. The endothelia, which are the blood vessels in the lungs, they don't absorb oxygen properly. And so it causes the right side of the heart to work over time. So my heart was 3.5 times too big. And when I actually went in, when they had lungs, a doctor, a cardiologist came in and said, we think that you need a heart too. But my first doctor, he had told me that when I had a transplant eventually, that they would want to give me a heart transplant. He said that if you can just get through it, your heart will go back to size and you'll be fine. And so I told the cardiologist, I said, anyone hurt? And he said, that's good, because we don't have one for you. But he was right. I was very sick. I flatlined twice during the surgery, and my extraordinarily gifted surgeon said in all of the surgeries that he has conducted, at that point he had been a surgeon for 20 years. This was the second most difficult that he had ever performed, and so I was grateful to live. But that was its own test.
Well, it lasted for hours. You flatlined twice.
Yes.
Which you know what flatlining is.
So fun.
And then
It's not.
And then you were in a coma for
34 days. The coma was an interesting experience because I was on so many drugs, and I had this very engaging linear dream throughout the whole thing, which was its own experience and its own story. But when I woke up, I remember seeing these 3 figures there. And have any of you ever been in an ICU or in a hospital? Yeah, my family, their heads all go up.
Yeah.
But the lighting is, it can be very harsh. But when you're not wearing glasses, it looks a little heavenly because it's this very blue light. And there are these 3 women standing in front of me, and I was like, oh, maybe I died. Like, maybe I'm in heaven. But as I squinted, I have terrible vision. I could tell that one of the women was my mother, and I realized I was alive. I have never felt joy like that in my entire life. I was just so profoundly grateful.
But an opera singer, you wanted to express your gratitude.
Yeah, I opened my mouth to say thank you, because I knew that my mother and whoever was with her must have been intimately involved in keeping me alive. And I tried to take a breath, and I couldn't, and my mouth was completely dry. And I didn't know what was going on, and my mother said, just smile, Charity, just smile. And when she said that, I realized that I didn't know what my abilities were. I weren't. I didn't know what life was going to carry, but I could smile. And I realized that was something that I could do. And I think that through all of these experiences, the thing that has carried me through time and again has been finding what I can do and finding what is possible, because there are a lot of things that haven't been possible. And so I spent a lot of time smiling because it was 2 months before I could breathe on my own, and there were only a few people who could read my lips, and so it was an interesting experience.
And it would be an extraordinary story if it simply ended there. But as you write in this wonderful book, and I hope you'll all leave here with scabs of copies, you're going to autograph them, right?
Oh, of course.
And build a house.
Of course.
You then had to encounter something any performing artist finds absolutely disagreeable. But this was in the most profound human sense, and that's to use a bad word, rejection.
Yes, yes. I thought I knew how to deal with rejection. I am a friend here who's also a singer, and as she knows, we face a lot of rejection in the arts. It's something that you grow very accustomed to. But when I found out I had rejection after I had relearned to breathe and walk and talk and eat and move and sing, I think it was the third most devastating experience of my life after getting cancer on my face and after the election of 2016. So, tops the list. Tops the list, my friends. Tops the list. But, hashtag true story.
Somebody throw your roll paper towel.
But especially, I think paper towels would help a lot with face cancer. A lot. It was a joke. I thought it was very funny. But that happens to me a fair amount. At least I laugh at my own jokes. It's helpful. It's helpful.
I don't know. I know a more discreet way to put this. What is it like to sing in the world, give voice to the world with somebody with lungs that I don't want to see somebody else's lungs. They're your lungs now, or are they?
No, I think it makes me very conscious of life as a shared experience. A lot of us spend a great deal of time behind computer screens and in these sort of isolated and balkanized experiences of life. That everything that we do, whether we recognize it or not, impacts others. And I think that this ability to be one of the people who is taking forth the legacy of my donor. She had 4 children of her own, and so they also had this legacy to carry on. But one of the responsibilities is to understand that there are so many people who are intimately involved in me being alive. And I have the gift of being reminded of that every breath. But it's true for each of us. We each have teachers, we each had parents or mentors or friends who have helped us get to where we are today. And it's so easy to forget that. It's so easy to feel alone. And one of the interesting experiences, you write so many books. I don't know how you do it. And they're all so beautiful. Even if they're about sports, which is not what I'm talking about. A book about the Cubs, I love it. I love it. But as I was...
Not a good way to say that.
Oh.
Charity, they're playing the Nats in the playoffs.
Oh, sorry. It's a great book anyway. Like the players, they go from team to team. Like the only thing that stays the same is the jersey. The only thing, they're all very, very strong, gifted, talented men. Okay.
Good.
So, good job. Play a good game. Be good people. But like the isolation of writing for me was extraordinarily difficult. extraordinarily difficult. As a lot of people know in this room, I am one of the most extroverted people you'll ever meet, and I loved people, and being isolated and being with myself all the time, and with my life and my experiences and my thoughts was at many times suffocating. But the final product of the book, I was just so happy with it. And one of the gifts was all of the friends and all of the love that you experience, because people are so happy for you. It's like having a baby, that is not as cute, but hopefully is as beautiful.
Because every other person here tonight is a member of your family, let me get you to talk about the fact that the profound experience that you went. Your family feels blessed to have you with them. But this was a rough experience for your brothers and your sisters.
Yes, yes. I have a remarkable mother. There is nothing that she would not do to help almost anyone, that definitely her children, and certainly me. And when I was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension, her second job, or third job, or fourth job, in addition to being mother to 11 children and homeschooling them all, and being a community activist and mother to everyone she meets, was becoming a medical advocate, which is an incredibly demanding thing. And I know that I received so many hours of attention and care and work that my siblings didn't, and my baby brother Zen, who's not here today. We're super proud of him. Because he just got a promotion, and we're very proud of him. But it was hardest on him. He was 6 years old when I was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension, and much of his life was spent with my mother, going back and forth across the country when I would have surgeries, when I'd have important doctor's appointments, when I'd have medical evaluations for transplant. And after my transplant, I was struggling with the fact that I couldn't sing anymore. That I'd spent my life since I was 4 years old hoping that I would learn to be an opera singer, that I developed the voice, and that I had worked at that point for 26 years on building a lasting career, and now I didn't think that it would ever come back. And he reminded me, Charity, we have all sacrificed so much so you can be alive, so you can be here. And I've given up so much of my childhood and my life so you can be here. And to hear you whining about not being able to sing as spectacularly as you did before is pretty empty. And it was an important reality check, because I think we can become very lost in our experience of illness and of disease. And as performers, I think we can also become a little lost in our attempts to achieve artistic greatness. And we forget that is actually achieved as a cast. You know, we don't become great alone. It's something that we are all a part of. And if we forget our team, we will never win the World Series, will we? That's your field.
Yeah, well,
baseball. But we'll never achieve what we're capable of.
and then, by the way, my family just entered. My wife Caroline and our daughters Elise, Paulina, Simon, Tilleman Dick. Yeah, we decided to take on a complimentary name.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm so glad.
I want to get you to talk about working with them.
Yes.
You've been so outspoken about this, and I think it's important. You persuaded me of that. We came to see you in Cleveland at the time of your second transplant. I got me to sign that. And very kind of the doctors to offer to take my organs right then and there. I told them I had a little more, you know, I planned on making a little more use of them, but in any event, this is something that is important, and it's a wonderful thing that people can do that doesn't really take a lot of effort.
It's true, you know, it's an interesting thing because Americans, it seems we can't agree on very much these days. Organ donation is the outlier. Over 90% of Americans agree that organ donation is great, but just over 50% of us are actually registered as organ donors, and they kept on finding that one of the reasons why was structural. Usually, at least since the 1970s, organ donation registries, and like the registration process for organ donation was done through DMVs. It was a driver donor program, which at the time was great. It was probably the most effective way of doing it. But now a lot of people rely on public transit. They bike, and who wants to go to the DMV? No offense to the DMV, they do an amazing job. They really do, especially at signing up organ donors. It just is time that people don't have. So now, if people get out their phones, they can go to donatelife.net/myEncore, and they can register to be organ donors right now. We're also launching a campaign, which is called the My Encore Challenge with Donate Life America, or the Donate Life My Encore Challenge. And it consists of 3 parts. You go and you register at donatelife.net/myEncore. And then you tell your own story of a second chance, because that's what organ donation really is. And we all want redemption. We all want second chances. We all want that opportunity to show the world all the good that we have, and then ask God if that's to join it. And it's wonderful, the stories that people are sharing. They're just they make me cry one after another after another.
I want to ask you about your faith.
Yes.
You ever wonder why this happened to you?
So, through critical illness and transplant 1 and transplant 2, I think I was a model citizen. I really do. I did not question. I realized that everything happens for a reason, and I found reasons that in my understanding of myself and the world made sense. Now, face cancer was a different experience.
We might need to explain how that is related to.
Oh, yeah. So my immune system is suppressed, and so transplant is an incredible gift, but it's also a challenge because I need to be very careful with germs. A lot of you know I do fist bumps. If you're healthy, I'll give you a hug, but I will not shake your hand because germs are real, and hands are grubby little things. I think the Japanese have it right with the bow. It's very respectful, and no one gets sick. That I used to just be worried about infection, but in 2015, late in the year, I had a freckle that started to change. I went to the dermatologist, and by the time that they did a biopsy, and by the time the pathology was done and the surgery was scheduled, it was 3.5 weeks, and this freckle had turned into the size of a kumquat on my forehead, a kumquat-shaped tumor, which they carved out. They thought they got everything, but the challenge with transplant is that your immune system, it just doesn't work in the same way that it does for normal people. And so it metastasized and moved to my parotid gland. And it was kind of like experiencing the process of aging that women go through over decades, over an 18-month period of time. And it was one of the most emotionally draining things that I've ever been through. I had a lot of big fights with Jesus. I remember being Cleveland, Ohio, and it, once in a while, it will sleet and rain and snow at the same time there. It's this really gross combination that I've never quite experienced anywhere else. And it seemed like the appropriate weather for the situation, and we got some bad news. And Yoni was in a store. I think he was trying to help me find wigs, and he went in to see if they were ugly wigs or nice wigs. So I just didn't want to deal with it. I was going through chemo and radiation, and my doctor called me and gave me this news, and I screamed at Jesus for about 35 or 40 minutes. Because sometimes things are senseless. I think that the whole country is going through that right now with another mass shooting that is taking place. And usually we've been able to find that this person struggled with depression, or they had a chemical imbalance, or they had an extremely childhood. And this just looks like it was a bad person who for some reason had joy from doing bad things. And I think it's important to understand sometimes bad things happen, and it's our job to figure out how to limit those things from happening, how to stop those things from happening. That's why I'm so grateful to scientists who devote their lives to finding cures for cancer and for diseases, so that we don't have to live with them. I'm grateful to legislators who try to limit violence and things like that. I'm grateful to the people who stand up and who are willing to not only identify problems but work for solutions. Because I think it's easy to complain, and sometimes it's easier to cry than it is to do something. But I think it's on us to make the future better than our present is.
Mad at Jesus name.
So me and Jesus, we're okay. We're okay. And I think he's like a neglectful oldest brother sometimes. But he really loves me, and I think he loves everyone, whether or not they're into Jesus. But we're okay. We're okay.
Well, I'm going to carefully, I want to draw you out a bit on this, because I think you're one of the few people I know. Because you might have, several different points in your life run through it in your mind, and I think they'll be part. Those of you, everyone here in your family knows who your grandfather is. But of course, your grandfather had a history in the Holocaust, and making so many people, among other things, wrestle with the residue of that in our lives, and the dark light that was over a century and continues to be. And the question is, how could that happen? How could we let it happen? And I think anyone who knows the luxury would wonder, how could something, this one train of misfortune and malady happen to a person so sterling and nice?
So I am kind of obsessed with religion, not just mine, with everyone's, and with why people believe what they do, and that includes people who have no belief in God and no belief in the hereafter. My mother was a student of theology, and I think that had I not grown up in a tradition with a way clergy, I probably would have become a preacher, because I love that stuff. I just think it's the best. But I think that my challenges in many respects are easier than the challenges that are caused by cruelty. Nature is an interesting thing, and she will bless one person to run like the wind, and another person not to be able to walk at all. And we will find our own strengths and our own abilities and our own path, regardless of the abilities that we are given and the abilities that we aren't given. To me, what is more interesting is the indifference and the unkindness that we can each display to one another, and the goodness and generosity and charity that hello.
I was going to point that out.
that we can bestow on each other, that I have experienced. I know that at one of my most vulnerable points, there's a woman that I knew named Sue Wen. She no longer lives in the DC metro area, but she's a single mom, and she never, even though you wouldn't know it, but she never had a lot of money. But as I was struggling through illness, she was always there with flowers or with donuts or with a movie or something wonderful. And I know that she had to work extraordinarily hard to support her little family. But the kindness that she showed to the weakest of friends and associates and colleagues and members of her community was continually humbling. And I think that there's a story in Scripture called the widow's mite, about how there is a poor widow who gives a mite to the church and or to the synagogue, and while people with much more to give gave comparatively little, because the widow, the mite was all that she had. And I think that it's, as you think about the unkindness and the injustice of the world, I think it's imperative that we think about how we can fix it, because that's not God's job, that's our job, as far as I'm concerned. That's why we're here, is to fill in the blanks, to fill in the injustice, and to create equality and mercy and kindness where it didn't exist. And if that's not happening, that's on us.
Ruben would invite your questions. I've got one question I'll say for later. I know you raised your hand.
I do have a microphone. Pass around.
I have to
so we can
say,
all hear the question.
This is Libby Griffin, who for over a decade, I think, has facilitated my health care, and she's an amazing.
That introduction. Having known you for many years through many medical and emotional and personal crises, and the book, which I finished reading last night, by the way, I have to ask you, what's your next endeavor?
So I compose in addition to writing, and while I've been writing the book, I was thinking about children, because Yoni and I, we made kind of a pact that if we got to 3 years, we'd figure out what we wanted to do about kids. And it's very complicated to have children as a lung transplantee. And so I thought my first job was to talk to women who I knew and I loved and I respected who didn't have children, and to see what that path forward looked like. And I talked to women who I'd known for most of my life, and I thought I knew what their stories were. And they were so different from the stories that I had told myself about their lives. And I realized that if I had told myself stories that were so far from their reality, as a woman who probably will never have children, that we probably all were doing that. And And so I'm working on a piece that has to do with that, and I'm really excited about it. But I'm also so excited about the book. Next week I'm debuting at Symphony Hall in Boston, singing, which is wonderful, and I'll be in 14 cities in the next couple of months, talking about my book. So but after that's done, I think that's on the plate. Thank you. Oh, okay, another introduction, I'm sorry. But the week I was diagnosed with idiopathic pulmonary hypertension, which was my underlying disease, Dan dove into a pool. He's the older brother of my best childhood friend. And that's when he got his wheelchair. And so we have had these parallel challenges in our lives, and he is a wonderful individual. So, sorry, go ahead, Dan. He's a lawyer.
Yeah. So I had to go about 2 months after I broke my neck. I was in the hospital for Colorado, and you came to visit me, and I was a little bit drugged up. We tried to be married, and we had a moment in between saying, and it gave me this ray of light and happiness when I was struggling to breathe. One of them layers, now you remember, even really worse. And you saying it gave me life again. Your life was, well, with your book, what do you want to give to the readers of
I really appreciate that question.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, the microphone.
So, the question was, what's the goal of the book? Like, what's the thesis? What do I hope people will get out of it? From the time I've been quite young, from the time I could talk, I went up to strangers and I told them that I couldn't say my R's, but I said, when I grow up, I want to be a great artist. And that's what I would tell them, one after another after another. And
It's actually true.
it's true. It's true. I get it. And then I would tell them I was very shy. And they'd be like, who are you? So I had been obsessed with this idea of greatness from the time I was young. What makes us great? What is it? And how can I achieve that? And I had been working on this book, and then I don't mean to get political, but sometimes I do anyway. And then the campaign of the election happened, and there was this whole discussion of what it was to be great, and it was very strange because that's kind of what my book was about also. And one of the things that was hard for me is that the thesis of the campaign was very different from the thesis of my book. Because throughout my experiences, I found that greatness isn't being bronzed in a statue. Greatness happens when we are willing to let go of what our vision of the future looks like, and allow something of true beauty to come into form, to be created. And so I hope that the book will allow people to sit with this idea of how we can rely on one another, how we can pull together as communities and as a society to truly be great, to lift one another up, to comfort those in need of comfort, to help the sick and the poor and the downtrodden, and to bring something of beauty and value and equality to the world, because I think that's really what makes us great. It's really
were in the studio the other day, we had to pass that back and forth. It's a longer one. Not the same one as we had. I don't want you to think that, yeah. We do have more than one.
Charity. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I talk very loud. So,
I want to give you an introduction.
Yes.
Can I give this?
No,
This is Lieutenant Colonel. I'm sorry, Penny Gardner, who has been a leader in helping to reform our military, and she's amazing. So, pull her aside. She's a remarkable woman.
thanks, Charity.
I'm sorry, but I have to.
So, my question for you, as someone who has, from the moment I met you, inspired me to be a better person and to try harder and to do more and to be that example, I just imagine, I look at you and you are always so put together and cool, and cool as in awesome, but also cool as in like, I'm dealing with whatever, because that is Charity. To me, that would be a lot of pressure, and I would feel like, oh my gosh, there are so many people who look up to me and what I do. And I guess my question to you is, I've got to imagine that you must feel some pressure. How do you deal with that?
You know, when you grow up in a big family, you're kind of always on display. Because my siblings and I, they are my best friends in the entire world. They are also my harshest critics. And so if you can get through dinner time at the Tilleman Dick household, everything else is cake. I'm telling you, everything else is cake. But that said, I think that that sometimes we all put on masks, and I do that sometimes too. I don't want people to worry about me. I know they've spent so much time worrying about me already that I don't want to give them any more reasons to do that. And I think it's probably a mistake. I think in the blogger culture that we have today, and the Instagram culture that we have today, there is this pressure on women in particular to be perfect all the time and to put our best foot forward, to always have our makeup done and our hair beautifully curled or straightened or rounded, whatever your style is, to be your brand all of the time. And it is exhausting. It is exhausting. And I think that you bring up a really important point, because as women, I think we owe it to each other to be vulnerable enough to let one another know that actually this is hard, and I'm trying, and I'm desperate, and I don't know what I'm doing, because I probably feel that way at least 4 times a month. So, but the hashtag true story again. But so it's an interesting. I think it's an interesting societal issue that we're dealing with right now, and I deal with it in my own way.
Can I follow up on that, Colonel? I really don't like the phrase role model.
Yeah.
But all that being said, if it applies to anyone, that's an extra level of responsibility, isn't it?
Well, you know, right now, as a society, I think that we're dealing with this institutional decline, partially because we have a tendency to have idols. I don't mean to get biblical, but I do that all the time. I get biblical all the time. I get political all the time. I don't mean to, but I do. But one of the 10 Commandments is that we are not supposed to have idols, and we do it constantly. And it's not fair to the people we idolize. It's not fair, and it's not fair to the rest of us. And I think that it's important, and as important as it is to celebrate one another, it's important to remember that there is something to celebrate about every single person in this room. There's something that is spectacular and beautiful and wonderful. There are probably 80 books that could be written in this room. Now, I don't know if you want to, it gave me face cancer, but I think that it's important not to put people on a pedestal that's too high, because we are all human. We all fail, and we will all fall. And we don't want that trip down to be too.
Any other questions? I know we do want to leave lots of time to sign books, but yes. I was calling my wife, Caroline.
This is my mother, and that's
This is actually a question for Scott. I want you to know that we were able to see Scott under some pretty harsh conditions too. Not his own. He was in better physical condition when we met, but I think he came back to Cleveland Clinic probably for a checkup or something, and somehow he got word that Charity was in the hospital. This was when she was awaiting her second transplant, and she was in a terribly desperate situation. I want you to know that this person was such a busy life, and Scott, the question is really for you, how are you so good in so many different contexts? Scott came in, he spent a great deal of time by her side. I don't know, I think Charity was aware that Scott was there.
I remember.
My biggest mistake in this whole thing is I constantly think Charity has no idea what's going on. And when I read the book, I was like, wow, she really knew what was going on. I never really believed it till I read the book, and I hadn't written it, and she wrote it. It was all there. But I am, wow, Scott, that you are as good as you sound, and you look as good as you sound, and my experience is that in situation after situation, I know you are a devoted father, you are a devoted husband. You really are able to care in moments when many people with as much celebrity as you have, they'll give a cursory, hello, how are you? And they're out, but that is not you. And I'm really fascinated at how you deeply care for every story you tell, and you certainly deeply care about people who count. And I wonder if you do. I know you're not supposed to be hero worship, but Scott's having you are my hero. And that's I have to tell you.
You know my family behind you, and I have to tell you our 14-year-old is rolling her eyes. I think, Darlene, you'll stipulate that's just not true at all, right? I do care about the Cubs. Bad week to say that perhaps here, and I love my family. And there's no. Thank you. We did get some emails because Charity was on our show the same week that we had. We spoke with teenagers in Southern Ohio about the opioid crisis, and that was just, and I just, as much as a father as anything else, I just broke down talking to them. And I will venture, it's got nothing to do with me. I respond so deeply to what you say about finding the good in each and every person, because I think that is what we're put on this earth to do. That's how, that's the only way I think that we've lived, that we've left the mark, that we pass on something to others. And I don't know anyone who exemplifies that more. And I also know that doesn't come from hard use.
It's really wonderful.
We're going to get some terrible
That's it, we do need someone to walk around with. Also
It's
some
true,
paper
it's
towels.
true. Everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a purpose. Some people should be just thrown. The whole life long.
You didn't even, I'm sorry. You notice that? You
More
didn't even unwrap it
questions.
for
More
people.
questions. More questions. More questions.
Yeah.
What are the words?
Done.
So you not only found your singing voice once, you found it 3 times. And I imagine that you found your voice not just once, but 3 times. What was that like? How did you do it?
I was very fortunate that best training of my life always came right before the transplant. And so I had a teacher I had 2 teachers in Europe. One was Eva Martron, and one was a woman named Rita. Rita was the first person who really helped me understand what technique was. And during the transplant, all of my muscles atrophied. One of the good things about all of my muscles atrophying is muscle memory is a real thing. That's how we breathe, is our diaphragm remembers what to do, and it just does it on its own. And I had a lot of bad muscle memory. And so when I retrained my voice, I was able to let go of all of the bad habits that I had before and rebuild a technique with what I already knew. And about a year after my first transplant, I was introduced to a woman named Deb Birnbaum, who was an incredible breathing coach. And when we were working together, she taught me all of these wonderful tools. She gave me all of these wonderful tools for breathing. And so when I had the second transplant, I was able to once again integrate everything she had taught me with the technique that I had before. And then after cancer, I had to learn again. And I found another teacher who, his name is David Michael Heath, who is, I think, the best technician in New York City right now. And what I learned from him helped me to the point that I really feel the voice that I sing with now is best it's ever been.
I agree.
Oh, thank you. And so while the process was agonizing, the end product has not suffered. I think it has only gained, which is crazy, but I think it's true. So lots of fun. Great to see.
Hi. Is this on?
I can hear you, even if it's not, and I'll repeat the question so I can hear it on Facebook Live.
So I have pulmonary hypertension, and amazingly, right within maybe a week or 2 of being diagnosed of this disease that I had never heard of before, a coworker and friend of mine brought in an article of you in, is it Cosmo or Glamour?
Glamour.
Okay, did a profile. And she's like, oh, here you go. And to have someone who was younger and much more together than I was, but to have you to look at and see, here's this phenomenal person who is keeping it together and is doing all of the right things and is just moving forward and dealing with this, gave me a bit of hope. And then I saw you shortly thereafter at the 930 Club, and I've been following your journey along on Facebook, and then today I was just told I was listed for transplant. Terrified and excited, but
Those are the right emotions.
but I just want to thank you for being such an amazing individual, that you have been so open to share your journey with all of this, including the cancer and everything you've gone through, and just being an advocate for those of us, and your grandfather, and is this your grandmother?
Yes,
I
this
guess.
is my grandmother in Atlanta.
I just want to thank you for that. And just also one other question
dealt with that more recently than I did when I had PH. Now, the last year I had PH was very, very hard. There was a lot of personal tragedy in my life, and my medical condition actually declined very rapidly in that 5th year. I was diagnosed, I don't know, we're all different levels of sick when we're diagnosed. But I was diagnosed when I already had a stage 4 case of pulmonary arterial hypertension. And, but I think I had been learning to adapt to the disease for a very long time. And I was much more comfortable with this disease that I was familiar with than I was with the prospect of not being able to sing anymore. I was much more comfortable with that idea. And so the first transplant, I did not want at all. I was in a long-term battle of wills with my doctors, insisting that no, I did not want to be listed for transplant. No, I did not want to a lung transplant, and I certainly didn't want a heart-lung transplant. And I think that since I've never really been able to run, I tried to play sports, but I always got very exhausted, very, very quickly, and I had the sense that I was going to faint, probably from the time I was 9 or 10 years old. Since I had been dealing with the challenges for a long time, they were normal. I didn't know anything else. Transplant's difficult. You just have to be really vigilant about everything. But it's also a tremendous gift. I run, I jump rope, I eat all the salt I want. And so there are really good things that you can, we'll talk before the evening's through, but I'm so happy you're here, because these communities of common experience are so important for me. And I've learned so much from your advocacy and everything you've done.
I'm from reading Charity's book and knowing her, you will have the strength. On top of everything else, you will know there are people rooting for you, and someone has given you a great gift, and you will be motivated to carry that.
Yes, I feel like there's definitely been divine intervention, because to be diagnosed and then have you in the magazine, and I'd only been in DC for 3 years, and here you are at the 930 Club. And to be listed today when I'm coming to see you tonight, and knowing I have this book to look forward to read, and I just want to thank you for being my hero.
Thank you so much.
We do want to leave plenty of time for Charity to sign books. I do have one last question. I think you've touched on it. I can't think of anybody in a better position to answer this question. What really counts in life?
I think there's only one thing on that list, and it has a lot of different arms, but it's love. It's the one thing that lives beyond us. It's the one thing that I believe is eternal. I think that love and hate kind of echo into eternity, and we get to decide which one wins. And as we bind together in families and communities and in friendship and reaching across lines of religion and belief and ideology, we will solve the greatest problems that humanity has, not because of divas, not because of one hero or one genius, but because of a collective will to grow and to succeed and to progress. And I think at the end of the day, John Lennon and Jesus, they got it right. Love is number one. This is all that matters. Thank you so much.